Hey, what's up, guys? This is Doug with Outlaw Offroad. You know, we get questions every day on topics ranging from sway bars to long arms and everything in between. And obviously, we've got answers to those questions. We answer them all the time, but we wanted to make a video series for you guys to get into those questions, answer those questions for you, give you the right information, help you cut through all the stuff that you may have seen, some of the bad information out there. So that's what we're going to do right here, right now. So let's get after it. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to episode 6 of Let's Get After It. This is going to be a final episode for this series talking about the basic components of lift kits that we addressed back in episode 1 and episode 2 when we talked about where do we start looking for lift kits, how do we start looking for lift kits, and what basic components do we want to see in lift kits. So we've already talked about shocks, we've already talked about springs, we talked about sway bar links, we talked about control arms. Today we're going to talk about track bars. You got two of them. You got a front one, you got a rear one on solid axle vehicles. So they're equally important. They do different things. They act different ways, and we want to see them do certain things to make sure that your vehicle is going to ride happy. So let's start with the front. Obviously, that is where all the steering's at. We got more geometry up there. We want to talk about that a little bit more. So when you lift a vehicle, any vehicle, that track bar, if you look under it, under your vehicle right now, there's going to be a bar that attaches to the frame on your driver's side, generally on all the newer vehicles, and it's going to attach to your axle more towards the passenger side, and it's going to be behind the steering components. This is behind your tie rod. This is behind your drag link. It's going to hide right behind your drag link. It's going to run roughly that same angle. That is the track bar. That is a super important part. Very, very common to see bad track bars causing death wobble, bad joints, all this kind of stuff. Has an incredible amount of an effect on your steering feel. It's a very, very important part, and it's why we really, really like to see track bars and that angle addressed in any lift kit. From the factory, those track bars are a fixed length, 31 inches, 32 inches, 34 inches, whatever that length is. Fixed points, fixed length. Doesn't need to be adjustable from the factory. Factory doesn't have the vehicle lifted. However, when we lift the vehicle and that body and powertrain gets further away from that axle, that track bar is still the same length. So those mount points have to be the same distance from each other. So as you lift, it's actually going to swing that axle underneath the vehicle. The problem there is when you sit it back down after finishing your lift kit and you don't put an adjustable track bar on there, you don't do something to address that, now your body is not sitting level. It's not level left to right. You call it dog track and dog walking. There's lots of terminology for it, but at the end of the day, it's not on there straight. The body's facing this way, the axles are facing this way. It's not good. And of course, the higher you go, the more dramatic that's going to be. You may be a half inch off at 2.5 inches, a third of an inch, whatever, and 3/4 of an inch at 3.5, 4 inches. Anything off is not good, but obviously, the higher you go without addressing it, the worse that's going to be. That's going to play havoc with your alignment, how it goes down the road, aerodynamics, everything. Everything is just not good. It's all bad. So how we address that? At the most basic, we address that in the front with an adjustable track bar. And we adjust it to a length that allows the axle to sit under the body like it did from the factory. That's all we're looking for. We want the body to sit flush left to right on that axle, and having an adjustable track bar that we can move out helps with that. A side benefit from that is, generally speaking, the bushing materials, how they're made, the bar themselves are generally going to be an upgrade from factory. So you may also notice that your steering feels a little bit better. Your steering feels a little bit more responsive. That's an added benefit for a relatively inexpensive part that should come with your lift kit if you are wanting to get a quote-unquote complete system. So installing that's going to help you in a lot of ways. And then, of course, it's going to set you even left to right, and we want that. So definitely look for an adjustable track bar on the front. Generally 2.5 inches and up. That's a pretty good rule of thumb. Obviously, we can change that a little bit based on your vehicle. Do you have a Gladiator? Do you have a Wrangler, a TJ, whatever? But that's generally a pretty good rule of thumb. Not really looking to change your track bar if I'm doing an 1.5 inch leveling kit, right? So we're not really going to talk about it there. We're talking about full lift systems. Moving on to the rear. The rear's a little different. There's no steering back there, unless you've got some really crazy, weird 4-steer Wrangler from the factory that I don't know about. Pretty simple back there. You got a track bar. It's mounted the same way the front is, but exactly the opposite. So where the front looks like this, the rear is like this. So they X together. And when those X's are lined up, the body tracks straight on the axles. So when you lift it, same thing. It's going to move. It's just going to move the opposite way. So imagine if you lift it 3.5 inches and you don't do anything with the track bars. The axles are still like this, and now the body is like this. That's not good. I've seen it bad enough where aerodynamic, aero push, can actually get somebody going down the highway and push them one side just because of track bars. It can get that bad. It's hard to get that bad, but it does happen. So in the rear, we're not really looking adjustable until we get up in the upper lift heights. When you're lifting that body and that frame away, we call that roll center. You're raising the roll center. So centrifugal forces, physics, all that. But at the end of the day, we're lifting that body and frame away, and that's going to change the characteristics of how that body and that frame and that powertrain perform. So we will generally, at 2 to 3 inches, 2.5 inches plus or minus, we're generally just going to take a bracket and we're going to put it on the axle side, and we're going to raise that track bar mount point. We're going to raise it up a couple inches. That helps. It does also help move that back out, move that. We've got a fixed track bar, but we've changed and played with that mounting point distance a little bit. So we're actually centering it back. A lot of companies will both raise and move their new mounting hole in a little bit so that we're addressing the length. And then you're also raising that roll center. You may not notice that just riding around in a Jeep, but you will know if you get in a Jeep A and Jeep B and all things are the same except one has taken care of their rear track bar and one hasn't, you're going to feel it. It is a difference you're going to feel, and it does make that rear end feel more planted, more stable, because you're doing that, you're taking care of that geometry. In general, we want that track bar within reason to be as parallel as possible to the ground. We don't want to see any extreme angles. We want that thing as parallel as possible, which is why we do the relocate brackets. Once we get above generally 3.5 inches, we're lifting that enough where just that simple relocate's not going to be enough. So that at that point, we're going to change that track bar to an adjustable rear to adjust that. And there are some kits that will do an adjustable rear and a bracket. Some do just the adjustable rear, what have you. But different companies handle that different ways. But just making sure that we at least address it is going to help how the vehicle rides down the road, how you feel in the vehicle, and just making sure that you have the proper components to do it. So just making sure that you've got those track bar angles and links taken care of, obviously in the front with having an adjustable, and in the rear possibly having an adjustable, but definitely having that relocate bracket are going to help you in your steering. It's going to help you in your geometry, just the physics of how the vehicle goes down the road straight, and it's just going to provide you a much more enjoyable experience when you're driving your vehicle down the road.